And when other nephrologists have tried to duplicate these results, they have got very variable results or inconsistent or not as good results. So it is used in clinical practice, but it depends on your experience. Some people believe in it and others don't. So side effects of steroids, whether oral or IV, have already been dealt with by Dr. Kaplan, but it's really important to remember the behavioral changes for your children. Almost everything that is mentioned in a textbook, your child may show some signs of it at a certain point on steroids. So it's really important to be aware of that and be very patient with the child. And you have already heard about the other side effects. Now let's go to treatment of frequently relapsing FSGS. So there will be those 20 to 25% of patients who will respond. A lot of them, majority of them who do respond, will have frequent relapses. And by definition, frequent relapses means more than 3 per year. So if you respond, that's good news, but you may relapse again and again. And what are your therapeutic options at that point? Again, it's the same thing. You continue using prednisone alone, or you use cyclophosphamide and cyclosporin. And in this context, these two medications are really used as steroid sparing because clearly you're responding to the prednisone, but you don't want to have to take it again and again and again because of the side effects. So in this situation, these are just steroid sparing medications. When looked in this context, somehow steroid responsive patients with FSGS respond much better to Cytoxan than they do to cyclosporin. Complete remission rate is 51% here, as opposed to just 19% for steroid-resistant patients. And partial remission is 23%. Also, you then tend to get less relapses and less frequent relapses, and the time between relapses increases. So you get time off from having to take any medication. So that's the biggest advantage of using cyclophosphamide in this context. Cyclosporin also has a very good response, over 70% remission. But again, the same problem. When you stop the medication, very high incidence of relapses. Now coming to this very important issue of using ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers in FSGS. You may have heard of different names, enalapril, lisinopril, losartan, valsartan. They have two effects. They lower blood pressure, which sometimes you need to do anyway in FSGS. But they decrease proteinuria, and we call them renoprotective. They decrease some cytokines in the kidney which are fibrogenic or increase your chances of sclerosis. And it has been used in so many different diseases, kidney diseases, and shown to have had a good effect that we use them in most chronic proteinuric diseases now. So it really should be adjunctive treatment for most patients with FSGS. Now to answer the question, has this been tried as a monotherapy by itself without using any immunosuppression? The answer is yes, it has been used anecdotally and in a couple of publications. They are not controlled studies, they are very small series of patients, but one paper that I could allude to used this in 2 groups of patients, one with steroids, one without steroids. And their remission rate or decrease in proteinuria was really equal in the group that got steroids with enalapril and enalapril itself. So it does seem to decrease proteinuria significantly. And just from personal experience, I can say I have seen proteinuria disappear in some patients on enalapril alone who had a milder form of FSGS. So they really should be used in everybody. Whether to be used alone, at this time, it's hard to answer that question. There are side effects, obviously, to enalapril, dry cough at night. The scary one is swelling of the tongue, very uncommon, less than 1% of patients. It can increase potassium and creatinine levels, so it should be monitored periodically depending on what other medications you're on. And the important one to remember is it can cause birth defects if used during pregnancy. So women of childbearing age group should be very careful while using any ACE inhibitor. Now coming to supportive treatment. First is treatment of edema, which Dr. Kaplan has already gone into a little bit, and you'll hear more about the low salt diet, the diuretics, albumin Lasix infusions, and then hydrotherapy. I could be scolded for even putting this up on the slide. But let me tell you a little bit about hydrotherapy. It's something from antiquity. It's something that has been described from the time of Hippocrates. It was used for all kinds of diseases, not just kidney diseases. And then somewhere in the 1980s, Bentley described water immersion or hydrotherapy as a form of treating nephrotic edema. And there is very little scientific information on this. But from personal experience, I can tell you it works somewhat in some patients. And what it means is immersing yourself in water. If you have severe edema, putting your entire body below the neck in water, it's not very practical, mainly because you need several hours of water immersion to see an effect. But beyond 2 hours, you start seeing a diuresis. And there have been some postulated mechanisms. It increases levels of certain hormones which cause a diuresis. And to just tell you an anecdotal story, we had a young adolescent girl who got a relapse very close to her prom and could not fit into her prom dress. And we tried diuretics. We gave her an albumin Lasix infusion, but her edema was not improving. And we just told her to go home and stay in the pool for several hours, which she did. And she told us she was able to fit into her prom dress. So it may work. It's something non-traditional and not scientifically proven. Treatment of hypertension, we already talked about, I think, before, very important in FSGS, because by itself, hypertension can lead to more kidney damage. So if you have hypertension with FSGS, optimal control is essential. Ideal drugs would be ACE inhibitors or ARBs, because they will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You could use diuretics if there is edema, or really any other class of antihypertensive as needed can be used. Now, this is a little more complicated question, whether to treat the high cholesterol, especially in children with FSGS. There is a body of literature suggesting that medications which decrease cholesterol are also helpful in other ways for kidney disease. Some of them are immunosuppressive, some of them delay progression of kidney failure. We don't have a final answer on this, but there is more and more information that it is good not to have a high cholesterol, which we all know. So you see elevation in total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. Currently, there is no definite guideline or recommendation for treatment in children, but it really should be considered in unremitting cases. So if you're not going into remission, if you're continuing to have edema, high cholesterol, low albumin, certainly consider using medications. Generally speaking, dietary modification alone is not enough. You need a medication. These are not commonly used in children, and several medications are available. Commonly used ones are statins: pravastatin, lovastatin, atorvastatin. Now, it's difficult to make a recommendation to use them in children because technically they are not FDA approved for children for multiple reasons. But a lot of us will use them in clinical practice, and they are safe. There are publications on its safety and efficacy in other situations in children. Now, coming to newer therapies, they are not all that new, but something that is not currently standard of care. So we already mentioned MMF, which is also called CellCept or mycophenolate mofetil. Dr. Gaskell talked about it. It's part of the one arm in the clinical trial. This is relatively new. It was only introduced in 1994, somewhat similar in mechanism to cyclophosphamide, but certainly has fewer side effects. Main ones are diarrhea, abdominal pain. It too can decrease your white count, but we don't know anything about it causing malignancies in the future or effects on sterility. So it sounds safer at this time. This too is used in combination with prednisone. There are few published reports. They are not controlled studies. So overall, from what I read, the response has been variable, and again, chances of relapse are high on stopping treatment. But it is a steroid-sparing medication and certainly less toxic than cyclosporin. So if you have to choose, you want to use something new and you don't want cyclosporin, this is a good choice. Tacrolimus is very similar to cyclosporin. It's the same group of drugs. Again, it's also used in renal transplants as an anti-rejection medication. There are few reports of its use. There are good reports. In the ones that are published have shown that patients resistant to other medications have done well on tacrolimus. But again, very high rate of relapse on discontinuation. And just like cyclosporin, this too can have nephrotoxicity or side effects on the kidney function. Now, is there anything newer than that? Now, there is a new medication called rituximab, which is really only right now approved for use in certain kinds of cancers. There are reports of rituximab being used in many different glomerular diseases: lupus, membranous nephropathy. They're all anecdotal reports. They're not large studies. And as far as FSGS is concerned, I only found one report, which is recently published in the New England Journal, where it was not used primarily for FSGS, but a patient who had recurrent FSGS and was on plasmapheresis without response happened to get what's called a specific kind of cancer which happens after transplant. It's called PTLD. And that is treated with rituximab at times. So this particular patient received rituximab for the PTLD and went into complete remission of the FSGS, which to that point had been resistant to treatment. So this is something that you may hear more about in the future. Coming to plasmapheresis, what it really means is removal of plasma. And what you're doing here is through an intravenous line put into a central catheter, so a catheter either in your neck or chest in a large blood vessel, you're removing your plasma to try and remove specific disease-associated factors. So in FSGS, we think we are removing the permeability or the circulating factor. Now, there are several reports of its use in recurrent FSGS when it occurs after transplantation, but really very few reports in native kidneys. So in primary FSGS, before transplant, there are just 2 or 3 publications about its use. They've shown a good response, but they have not shown complete remission in some patients. They've shown a partial remission. Some have had a complete remission. It's difficult to advocate for this treatment right now for primary FSGS. One, it involves putting a central catheter. Secondly, we don't know how long to use this treatment. In the published reports, there have been 6 to 10 treatments used, and patients have responded. It's not something we can use over and over again or long term, because you would have to leave this catheter in and do an intensive treatment in an hospital for 1 or 2 hours. And we just don't have enough information from the literature showing that it is effective on a long-term basis. So to summarize what is currently done, and this is variable depending on a nephrologist and on the center you're at, but almost everybody will get a trial of steroids unless there's a specific contraindication to its use at onset, and that could be for 4 to 8 weeks. If you have a partial response but not a complete response and you want to induce complete remission, you can try high-dose steroids or Cytoxan. If there's no response at all, I would not try Cytoxan. I would probably use high-dose steroids and consider cyclosporin. Now, obviously, a variety of other things can be done here depending on what you're comfortable with or what your experience is with. You could use MMF rather than cyclophosphamide or tacrolimus instead of cyclosporin, but that's really where we are at. And ACE inhibitors should really be used in each and every patient. Control of hypertension and possibly control of high cholesterol should be part of the treatment. Now, when we start treating, can we tell who is less likely to respond? We know a little bit about this from the literature. We know that African Americans and Hispanics don't respond as well. If you have high blood pressure or high creatinine at onset of disease, you're less likely to respond completely. And this is a biopsy finding, interstitial fibrosis, that is scarring in the interstitium, which is the area between the glomeruli and the tubules in the kidney. If you see a lot of scarring there, it sort of portends a bad prognosis in terms of response. Now, who is more likely to have kidney failure from FSGS? The single most important prognostic feature in this regard is failure to respond to medications. So if you don't respond to anything, whether it's steroids or escalated therapy, then your chances of going into end-stage kidney disease are highest. Patients who present with nephrotic syndrome, meaning the full-blown edema, low protein in blood, high protein in urine, they generally tend to have a worse course versus the patients who present mainly with just proteinuria without the other features. If you have a high creatinine at onset of disease, that means you have renal insufficiency, then you have a higher chance of going into kidney failure. And once again, interstitial fibrosis on kidney biopsy also has a poor prognosis in terms of kidney function. So if treatment fails, then what do we do, or what happens? If you are able to achieve complete remission, then your chance of progressing to kidney failure, end stage, is less than 15%. So it's not 0, but it's low. But if there is persistence of nephrotic syndrome, it is almost inevitable that this disease will progress to end-stage kidney failure. The number is more than 50%, but as we'll see in clinical practice, it's very high. Almost everybody will progress if there is absolutely no response. Now, progression to end-stage kidney failure, this is important to remember, it's generally slow, 5 to 10 years. It rarely happens quickly. Certain forms of FSGS will progress rapidly, even within 1 year from onset of disease. But this is a slow process, the kidney failure. So what do we do if everything fails? Well, you continue supportive treatment. If there is significant edema, use diuretics, but judiciously and for shorter durations of treatment. We rarely use them in high doses for a long-term period. Treat the high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and try and protect your kidneys from other insults. Avoid everything else that's nephrotoxic. Simple examples are medications like Motrin or Advil. A lot of people are not aware that they can cause kidney side effects, but if used chronically or in high doses, especially when you already have kidney dysfunction,